The lights in the repair bay flickered as T-Ho wiped the grease from his hands. He had been working for 18 hours straight, fixing cargo haulers that were older than his grandmother. His back hurt. His eyes burned. All he wanted was to sleep. The space station HFY 7 was not a beautiful place. It floated at the edge of Galactic Union territory, orbiting a dying red star. The walls were metal. The air smelled like oil and recycled oxygen. But it was home for T-Ho. He had lived here for 6 years, fixing ships and machines for anyone who needed help. He was good at his job, not famous, not rich, just good. His communicator beeped. The sound made him groan. Another broken ship, another emergency. He looked at the screen and his tired eyes went wide. It was a summons to the Union Tribunal Chamber. T-Ho had never been to the Tribunal Chamber. That place was for important people, politicians, criminals, nobles from the great species of the galaxy, not mechanics who smelled like engine fuel. He washed his face and changed into a cleaner shirt. It still had a small oil stain on the sleeve, but it was the best he had. Then he walked through the station's long corridors, past workers and traders and aliens of a dozen different species. Humans were new to the Galactic Union. Only 50 years ago, Earth had made first contact. In the grand order of the galaxy, humans ranked at the bottom. They were tolerated, sometimes useful, never respected. T-Ho did not mind. He had no dreams of glory. He just wanted to fix things and live a quiet life. The doors of the tribunal chamber slid open. Inside, the room was huge and cold. Bright lights shone down from the ceiling. A dozen figures stood in a half circle, and T-Ho felt very small as he walked toward them. Then he saw her. She stood in the center of the room, and she was the most striking being T-Ho had ever seen. Her skin was covered in scales that shimmered like silver moonlight. Her eyes were gold, with vertical pupils like a cat. 2 great wings rose from her back, but they were folded tight and wrapped in ceremonial chains. Her hands were bound too, and around her neck hung a collar marked with symbols that glowed a dull, angry red. She was Draken, one of the dragon people. T-Ho had seen dragons before, but only from far away. They were one of the elder species of the galaxy, proud, powerful, ancient. Their empire stretched across 1,000 star systems. They looked at humans the way humans might look at insects. But this Draken was different. She did not stand tall with pride. Her shoulders were bent. Her scales were dull in places, marked with the ash of shame. She did not look at anyone. She stared at the floor like she wished it would swallow her whole. A voice spoke. It belonged to the Union magistrate, a thin, blue-skinned alien with 3 eyes. Human designation T-Ho. You have been selected under the Accord of Claimed Debts. T-Ho blinked. The what? The magistrate continued as if he had not spoken. The individual before you is Lady Yura of House Salrin. She has been found guilty of crimes against her house and sentenced under ancient law. Her punishment is bondage to a member of a lower species, a marriage bond, permanent and unbreakable. The words hit T-Ho like a punch to the chest. Marriage, to her, this had to be a mistake. I did not agree to this, he said. Agreement is not required, the magistrate replied. You were selected by random registry. If you refuse, sanctions will be placed on all humans aboard this station. Loss of work permits, restricted movement, possible deportation. T-Ho felt cold. He looked around at the other figures in the room. Some wore the black robes of Union officials. Others were Draken nobles standing in a group near the far wall. They watched the scene with expressions of amusement. One of them, a tall male with dark red scales, smiled like he was watching an entertaining show. This was a punishment, T-Ho realized. Not just for the woman called Yura. It was meant to humiliate her, to break her. Being bound to a human, the lowest of the low, was the worst fate a proud Draken could imagine. Yura still did not look up. Her golden eyes stayed fixed on the floor. T-Ho thought about his coworkers, his friends on the station. If he refused, they would all suffer. Human families would lose their homes. Children would be forced to leave. He had no choice. "Fine," he said quietly, "I will sign." The ceremony was short and cold. There were no flowers, no music, no celebration. T-Ho pressed his thumb to a contract screen and a small device was clamped around his wrist. It matched the collar around Yura's neck. They were now connected by law. The Draken nobles laughed softly among themselves. The tall one with red scales walked forward. He stopped in front of Yura and leaned close to her ear. "Enjoy your human pet, little sister," he whispered, loud enough for T-Ho to hear. "May you rot in obscurity. Our house is finally free of your shame." Little sister, this was her brother. Her own family had done this to her. Yura said nothing. She did not move, but T-Ho saw her hands tremble inside their chains. The Draken delegation left. The officials left. Soon, only T-Ho and Yura remained in the great empty chamber. He looked at her. She was taller than him by almost a head. Her wings, even bound, were magnificent, but she seemed so small in that moment, so broken. "I am sorry," she said. Her voice was low and rough, like she had not spoken in days. "You did not deserve this fate." T-Ho was not sure what to say. He rubbed the back of his neck and looked at the device on his wrist. "My quarters are small," he said finally. "But there is a bed, you can have it. I will sleep on the couch." She looked at him for the first time. Her golden eyes were filled with confusion, like she could not understand his words. "Come on," he said, "you look tired." He turned and walked toward the door. After a long moment, he heard her footsteps behind him. The chains on her wings clicked softly with each step. They walked through the station corridors in silence. Workers and traders stopped to stare. A Draken noble, chained and shamed, following a human mechanic. It was a sight no one had ever seen before. T-Ho ignored them all. He was too tired to care. When they reached his quarters, he opened the door and stepped inside. The room was small. A bed in one corner, a worn couch, a desk covered in mechanical parts, shelves filled with old books and tools. It was not much, but it was clean. He pointed to the bedroom. "That is yours now. There are clean blankets in the closet." Then he walked to the couch, lay down, and closed his eyes. Within minutes, the exhaustion of 18 hours of work pulled him into deep sleep. Yura stood in the doorway for a long time. She watched the human sleep. She waited for him to wake up and give her orders, to command her, to use the bond's power to make her kneel or serve or suffer. He did not wake. He only slept, breathing slowly, his face peaceful. In 300 years of life, Yura had never seen anything like it. A master who did not command, a victor who did not gloat, a husband who gave her his bed and asked for nothing. She did not understand. But somewhere deep inside her chest, in a place she thought had died long ago, something small and fragile began to stir. It felt almost like hope. 7 days passed on HFY 7, 7 days of silence. T-Ho woke up each morning at the same time. He made breakfast in his small kitchen, 2 portions, one for himself and one for Yura. He left her food on the table, covered to keep it warm. Then he went to work. When he came home at night, the food was always gone. But Yura never thanked him. She never spoke to him at all. She stayed in the bedroom with the door closed, and T-Ho did not push. He simply ate his dinner, read his books, and slept on the couch. The other workers on the station asked him questions. How was married life? What was it like to live with a Draken? Was she as cold as she looked? T-Ho just shrugged and said nothing. He did not know the answers himself. On the 8th day, everything changed. T-Ho came home from work early. A supply ship had broken down in the docking bay, and he had fixed it faster than expected. He opened his door and stopped in surprise. Yura was sitting on the floor of the main room. Her chains were gone now. The collar was still around her neck, but her wings were free, folded against her back. She had a piece of broken machinery in her hands, one of the old devices from T-Ho's shelves. She looked up at him. Her golden eyes were sharp. "This motivator unit," she said. "The power coupling is installed backward." T-Ho blinked. "What?" She held up the device. "Here. The positive lead connects to the negative terminal. That is why it does not work." He walked closer and looked at the machinery in her hands. She was right. He had been trying to fix that unit for months. The solution was so simple he felt embarrassed. "How did you know that?" he asked. Yura set the device down. "I studied engineering at the Academy of Solren, before everything else." It was the longest sentence she had spoken to him. T-Ho sat down on the floor across from her. He picked up the motivator unit and examined it. "Thank you," he said. Yura watched him with that same confused expression she had worn since the first night, like he was a puzzle she could not solve. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "Do what?" "This." She gestured at the room, at him, at everything. "You leave me food, you give me your bed. You work all day and sleep on a couch that is too small for you. The law gives you power over me. Complete power. You could command me to cook, to clean, to serve you in any way you wish. Why do you not use it?" T-Ho thought about her question. He understood what she was really asking. Among the Drakons, power was everything. If you had power over someone, you used it. That was their way. "Because it would be wrong," he said simply. "Wrong?" Yura tilted her head. "The law permits it. The contract makes it legal. How can it be wrong?" "Legal and right are not the same thing." T-Ho set down the motivator unit. "Where I come from, marriage means partnership. Two people helping each other, not one person owning the other." Yura was silent for a long moment. Her wings shifted against her back, a small movement that T-Ho was starting to recognize as a sign of emotion. "I have lived for 312 years, she said quietly. "I have met thousands of beings from dozens of species. I have never heard anyone say something like that." T-Ho shrugged. "Humans are strange, I guess." Something changed in Yura's eyes. The hardness softened just a little. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "Yes," she said, "very strange." After that night, the silence between them began to break. Yura started coming out of the bedroom during the day. She sat in the main room while T-Ho worked on his machines. Sometimes she helped him, pointing out mistakes or suggesting better methods. Her knowledge of engineering was far beyond his own. They did not talk much at first, but slowly, word by word, conversation started to grow. T-Ho learned that Yura had been a respected engineer before her disgrace. She had designed ships for the Draken fleet. She had built machines that traveled between stars, but all of that had been taken from her when she was sentenced. He also learned what she had done to deserve her punishment. "My brother Kang is the head of our house now," Yura said one evening. They were sitting at the table, eating a simple dinner of rice and vegetables. "He took control after our mother died. I discovered that he was selling weapons, not to other empires, to slavers, to pirates, to anyone who would pay." T-Ho stopped eating. "That is terrible." "I tried to stop him. I gathered evidence. I went to the House Council." Yura's voice was bitter. "But Kang was clever. He turned the council against me. He said I was the traitor, that I was trying to destroy our family's honor for personal gain. They believed him." "And they sentenced you to this?" "Yes, marriage bondage to a lower species, the greatest shame a Draken can suffer." She looked at the collar around her neck. "My name was erased from our family records. My titles were stripped away. In the eyes of my people, I no longer exist." T-Ho felt anger rise in his chest, not at Yura, at her brother, at the system that had done this to her. She had tried to do the right thing and she had lost everything. "I am sorry," he said. Yura looked at him with surprise. "Why are you sorry? You did not do this to me." I know, but someone should have stood with you. Someone should have believed you. He met her eyes. I believe you. 3 simple words, but they hit Yura like a thunderbolt. Her eyes grew wet. She turned away quickly, hiding her face. You are a very strange human, Tiho, she said, her voice thick. So I have been told. Days turned into weeks. The awkward silence between them transformed into something warmer. Not love, not yet, but understanding, respect. A careful friendship built on shared meals and quiet conversations. Tiho learned to read Yura's moods by watching her wings. When they were tight against her back, she was anxious or sad. When they relaxed and spread slightly, she was comfortable. When they fluttered at the tips, she was amused. She learned things about him too. She learned that he hummed old Korean songs while he worked, that he loved spicy food and weak tea, that he kept a small plant on his windowsill and talked to it every morning. Why do you talk to a plant? She asked one day. My grandmother always said that plants grow better when you speak kindly to them, Tiho replied. She was probably right. Yura watched him water the little green thing. It seemed so fragile, so easy to kill, yet he cared for it with such patience. She thought about how he cared for her the same way, with patience, with kindness, asking nothing in return. Among the Drakons, relationships were transactions. You gave something because you expected something back. Power for loyalty, protection for service. Nothing was free. But Tiho gave without expecting. He was kind without wanting reward. It went against everything Yura had been taught about the universe. Late one night, she asked him the question that had been burning in her mind for weeks. Do you regret it, being bound to me? Tiho looked up from his book. He thought about the question seriously before answering. I did not ask for this, he admitted, but no, I do not regret it. Why not? Your life has become more difficult. People stare at you. They whisper about you. You could have had a normal life, a normal wife. Children, maybe. Tiho smiled. It was a small, gentle smile that made his tired face look younger. I have met many people in my life, he said. Most of them I forget, but you. I do not think I could ever forget you. Whatever happens, meeting you has made my life more interesting. That is not something to regret. Yura stared at him, then she laughed. It was a real laugh, sudden and bright, and it surprised them both. You are impossible, she said. Maybe, Tiho agreed, but at least I am not boring. For the first time in 300 years, Yura felt something she had forgotten existed. A warmth in her chest, a lightness in her heart. She did not have a word for it yet, but it felt like coming home. The message arrived on a cold morning. Yura read it 3 times before she believed it was real. Her brother Kang was coming to HFY 7. Tiho found her sitting on the floor of the main room, staring at the screen in her hands. Her wings were pressed so tight against her back that they trembled. What is wrong? He asked. She showed him the message, a formal notice from the Draken delegation. Lord Kang of House Salren would be arriving in 3 days to conduct an inspection of the station. As part of his visit, he would hold a dinner for important guests. Lady Yura was commanded to attend. He wants to humiliate me again, Yura said. Her voice was flat, dead. In front of his allies, his friends, he wants to show them what happens to those who oppose him. Tiho read the message carefully. At the bottom, in small letters, were instructions for Yura. She was to wear servants' clothing. She was to pour drinks and serve food. She was not to speak unless spoken to. You do not have to go, Tiho said. I do. Yura's claws dug into her palms. Under Draken law, a bound noble must obey commands from any superior of her former house. If I refuse, they can punish me. They can punish you too for failing to control your bonded wife. The word control made Tiho's stomach turn. He hated this law. He hated everything about it. What if I come with you? He asked. Yura laughed bitterly. You are not invited. Humans are not welcome at noble dinners. You would be thrown out before you reach the door. Ti-Ho was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to his bookshelf. He pulled out an old tablet, covered in dust. It contained the full text of the Accord of Claimed Debts. He had downloaded it weeks ago but never finished reading it. "Maybe," he said quietly, "but let me look at this first." The next 3 days were the longest of Yura's life. She tried to prepare herself mentally. She practiced keeping her face empty. She told herself that pride did not matter anymore, that she had already lost everything that could be lost. But at night, alone in the bedroom, she wept. She wept for the life she had lost, for the family that had betrayed her, for the future she would never have. Ti-Ho heard her crying through the thin walls. He wanted to help. He wanted to say something, but he did not know what words could heal wounds that deep. So instead he read, hour after hour, page after page. The Accord of Claimed Debts was old and complicated, written in legal language that made his head hurt. But somewhere in those thousands of words, there had to be something useful. On the morning of the dinner, he found it. He read the passage 5 times to make sure he understood it correctly. Then he smiled. It was a small, dangerous smile that he had never worn before. Yura left for the dinner at sunset. She wore the gray robes of a servant, simple and plain. Her beautiful silver scales looked dull under the rough fabric. She did not say goodbye to Ti-Ho. She could not look at him. The shame was too great. The dinner was held in the station's grand hall. It was a room reserved for important events, decorated with flags of the Galactic Union and the great empires. Tonight, the Draken banners hung everywhere. Red and gold, the colors of House Salren. Lord Kang sat at the head of the long table. His dark red scales gleamed in the light. Around him sat dozens of guests, Draken nobles, Union officials, wealthy merchants. All of them had come to see the great lord and to win his favor. Yura stood against the wall with the other servants. She held a pitcher of wine and waited for commands. Her heart was cold and empty. She had decided to feel nothing. It was the only way to survive. Kang noticed her immediately. He smiled like a snake seeing a mouse. "Sister," he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear, "come pour my wine." Yura walked forward. Her steps were steady. Her face was blank. She filled his cup without spilling a single drop. "Look at her," Kang said to his guests. "The great Lady Yura of Salren. Once she designed warships. Now she pours drinks." He laughed, and his guests laughed with him. "This is what happens to traitors. This is the fate of those who betray their blood." Yura said nothing. She stepped back and returned to her place by the wall. The dinner continued. Courses of food were served. Wine flowed freely. The guests talked and laughed and complimented Lord Kang on his success. No one looked at Yura. She was invisible, less than nothing. Then the doors of the grand hall opened. Everyone turned to look. A figure stood in the doorway, a human, wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit stained with oil. His hands were dirty. His hair was messy. He looked completely out of place among the silk robes and gleaming scales. It was Ti-Ho. The room fell silent. Lord Kang's smile disappeared. His golden eyes narrowed with anger. "What is this?" he demanded. "Who let this creature in?" Ti-Ho did not answer him. He walked forward through the silent hall. His footsteps echoed on the stone floor. He passed the rows of staring nobles. He walked past the guards who were too shocked to stop him. He walked straight to Yura. She stared at him with wide eyes. What was he doing? He was going to get himself killed. He was going to make everything worse. But Ti-Ho just smiled at her. That same small, gentle smile she had come to know. He took off his jacket. It was old and worn, with patches on the elbows. He draped it over her shoulders, covering the gray servant robes. "Sorry I am late," he said quietly. "The transport was slow." Kang rose from his chair. His wings spread wide with fury. "How dare you? Remove yourself immediately. Humans are not permitted here." Ti-Ho turned to face him. For a moment the room held its breath. A human mechanic facing a Draken Lord. It should have been laughable, it should have been pathetic. But Ti-Ho was not laughing, and he did not look pathetic. "Lord Kang," he said clearly, "I am here to invoke Section 14 of the Accord of Claimed Debts." A murmur ran through the crowd. Kang's eyes flickered with something that might have been surprise. Section 14 states that a bound spouse retains the right to speak as one voice with their partner, Ti-Ho continued. "Yura is my wife under the law. Her voice is my voice. Her presence is my presence. If you wish to command her, you must first command me. If you wish to humiliate her, you must include me in that humiliation. We are one under the accord." Silence, complete and total silence. No one had ever used Section 14. It was an old clause written centuries ago as a formality. No one had ever imagined that someone from a lower species would actually invoke it. No one had thought they would dare. But Ti-Ho stood there, grease-stained and tired, and he dared. Kang's face twisted with rage. "You think you can hide behind legal tricks? She is Draken, you are nothing. You are dust beneath my feet." "Maybe so," Ti-Ho agreed. "But she is my wife, and where I come from that means something. You cannot touch her without going through me. That is the law, your law." The Draken Lord took a step forward, his claws extended. For a moment it seemed like he might attack, kill the human right there in front of everyone. But the Union officials were watching. The witnesses were watching. If Kang broke the accord, he would face sanctions from the entire Galactic Union. His claws retracted, his wings folded back. He smiled, but it was the smile of a predator who had lost his prey. "Very well," he said softly. "Hide behind your laws, little human, but laws can change, and I have a long memory." He turned and walked back to his seat. The dinner continued, but the mood had changed. The laughter was forced. The conversation was stiff. Everyone kept glancing at the human mechanic who had walked into a dragon's den and walked out alive. Ti-Ho took Yura's hand. Her fingers were cold and trembling. "Come on," he said, "let us go home." They left the grand hall together. Behind them, Yura could feel her brother's eyes burning into her back. He would not forget this. He would find a way to punish them both. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. They walked through the station corridors in silence. When they reached the door of their quarters, Yura stopped. She turned to face Ti-Ho. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was shaking. "Why did you do that? You made an enemy of my brother. He is powerful. He is dangerous. He will destroy you." Ti-Ho looked at her. His eyes were calm and steady. "You did the right thing once," he said. "You tried to stop evil and you lost everything for it. No one stood with you then, but I am standing with you now." Tears spilled down Yura's face. She could not stop them. She did not try. "You fool," she whispered. "You beautiful, impossible fool." Then she did something she had never done in 300 years of life. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. It was a Draken gesture of deep trust, of acceptance, of love. Ti-Ho did not pull away. He stood there with her, two souls bound by law but connected by something far stronger. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But inside the small mechanics' quarters, warmth bloomed like spring after a long winter. The dragon had found her knight, and he wore oil-stained clothes instead of armor. The story spread like fire across the station. A human mechanic had walked into a Draken noble dinner. He had stood before Lord Kang himself and invoked ancient law to protect his bonded wife. He had spoken without fear, without bowing, without begging. And he had won. Workers whispered about it in the repair bays. Traders discussed it in the market halls. Even the guards talked about it during their shifts. The human who stood up to a dragon, the mechanic who did not kneel. For the other species on the station, the story was more than gossip. It was hope. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Union, the lowest ranked, the least respected. But if one human could stand against a Draken Lord and survive, What did that mean for everyone else? What did it mean for all the other species who had been told they were not good enough? Commander Hyun, the human who ran the station, called T-Ho to his office. "You have caused quite a problem," Hyun said. He was a gray-haired man with tired eyes. He had spent 20 years building the station's reputation. Now he was worried. "I know," T-Ho replied. "Lord Kang has filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Union. He wants your marriage bond annulled. He says you manipulated sacred law for personal gain." T-Ho felt cold. Can he do that? "He is trying. The Union Tribunal will hold a hearing in 2 weeks. Hyun leaned back in his chair. "If they rule against you, the bond will be broken. Lady Yura will return to Draken custody, and you will face charges of contract fraud." Contract fraud, that meant prison, maybe worse. "I did not manipulate anything," T-Ho said. "The law is the law. I just read it more carefully than they expected." Hyun looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled. "I know," he said, "and between you and me I am proud of what you did. But be careful. Lord Kang is not a man who forgets. He will do everything in his power to destroy you." T-Ho nodded. He already knew this, but knowing and feeling were different things. That night, lying on his couch, he stared at the ceiling and wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Then he heard footsteps. Yura appeared in the doorway. Her silver scales glowed softly in the dim light. "Can I sit with you?" she asked. He moved over, making room on the small couch. She sat beside him. Her wings brushed against the cushions. "You are thinking about the tribunal," she said. "Yes." "You are afraid." T-Ho considered lying, but lies did not feel right between them anymore. "Yes," he admitted, "a little." Yura was quiet for a moment, then she spoke. "When I was young, my mother told me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite the fear. You felt fear in that dining hall. I saw it in your eyes, but you acted anyway. That is true courage." T-Ho turned to look at her. Her golden eyes were soft, gentle, not the cold, hard eyes of the shamed noble he had met on the first day. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "The real reason, not what you told me before, the real reason in your heart." T-Ho thought about the question. He thought about all the days they had spent together, the meals, the conversations, the quiet moments of understanding. "Because you deserve better," he said finally. "Because somewhere in this big, cold universe, there should be at least one person who thinks you are worth fighting for. I wanted to be that person." Yura's breath caught in her throat. Her wings trembled. "In 3 centuries of life, no one has ever said that to me," she whispered. "Then everyone you knew was a fool." She laughed. It was a wet laugh mixed with tears. She leaned against him and he put his arm around her shoulders. They sat together in the darkness, 2 small creatures in an uncaring universe, holding onto each other. The next 2 weeks were busy. T-Ho continued his work in the repair bay, but now he had help. Other humans on the station started bringing him information. Things they had overheard, rumors about Lord Kang, secrets that people wanted to share. Yura worked too. She spent hours at T-Ho's desk, searching through old records and communications. She was looking for something specific, evidence. "My brother is careful," she explained. "But he is also arrogant. Arrogant people make mistakes. They leave traces. If I can find proof of his crimes, we might be able to turn the tribunal against him." It was dangerous work. If Kang discovered what they were doing, he would strike first. But Yura did not stop. She had something she had not felt in years: purpose. One night she found it. A communication log, hidden in the station's old backup servers. A message from Lord Kang to a known slaver discussing prices and delivery points. The message was encrypted, but Yura knew her brother's codes. She had helped design them long ago. When she decoded the message, her hands were shaking. "This is it," she said. "This is proof. He sold weapons to slavers, thousands of weapons, enough to arm a small army. T-Ho looked at the data on the screen. Names, dates, amounts, everything they needed. Will this be enough to stop him? If we can present it at the tribunal, yes. The Galactic Union does not tolerate weapons trafficking. He would be arrested, stripped of his titles, maybe even executed. T-Ho nodded slowly. Then we present it. The night before the tribunal, Yura did something she had not done in decades. She performed the ritual of the scale. Among Drakons, scales were sacred. They grew throughout life, each one carrying memories and experiences. To give a scale to another was the highest gift possible. It meant trust beyond words, bond beyond law. She stood before T-Ho in the small quarters they now shared. She reached to her chest, just above her heart, and pressed her claw against a single silver scale. With a soft sound, it came free. The scale sat in her palm, glowing with inner light. It was beautiful, perfect. She held it out to him. "This is called the gift of recognition," she said. Her voice was formal, but her eyes were anything but. "Among my people, it is given only once in a lifetime. It means I see you, I know you, I choose you." T-Ho looked at the scale. He understood enough to know that this was important, maybe the most important thing she had ever given anyone. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I have never been more sure of anything." He reached out and took the scale. It was warm in his hand, like holding a piece of sunlight. "I do not have anything to give you in return," he said. "We humans do not have scales or rituals like this." Yura smiled. "You have already given me something, something I thought I had lost forever." "What?" "Hope." She stepped forward and took his hands in hers. Her claws were careful, gentle against his soft human skin. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said, "I want you to know that these past weeks have been the happiest of my life. You taught me that kindness is not weakness, that mercy is not surrender, that a person can be good simply because being good is right." T-Ho squeezed her hands. "We are going to win tomorrow, I can feel it. Perhaps, or perhaps we will lose, but either way I regret nothing. Being bound to you by law was my punishment, but standing beside you by choice is my privilege." They stood together in the quiet of the night. Outside, the stars continued their endless dance. The universe was vast and cold and did not care about two small beings on a dying station. But in that small room warmth bloomed. Love, perhaps, or something very close to it. Tomorrow would bring the tribunal. Tomorrow would bring justice or disaster. Tomorrow would decide their fate. But tonight they had each other, and tonight that was enough. T-Ho put the scale in his pocket, close to his heart. Whatever happened, he would keep it there always. A reminder that even in darkness, even in exile, even in shame, something beautiful could grow. The dragon and the mechanic, bound by law, united by choice. Ready to face whatever came next. The tribunal chamber was full. T-Ho had never seen so many beings in one place. Union officials filled the benches. Draken nobles sat in their own section, their scales gleaming under the bright lights. Traders, workers, and travelers crowded the back of the room, all wanting to see the outcome. The story of the human mechanic had spread far beyond HFY 7. Ships carried the tale to other stations, other planets, other systems. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next. Lord King sat at the front of the chamber, surrounded by his lawyers and advisors. He wore robes of red silk embroidered with gold. His dark scales shone like polished stone. He looked calm, confident. He had already won in his mind. T-Ho and Yura sat on the other side. They had no lawyers, no advisors, just each other. The Union magistrate called the hearing to order. The same blue-skinned alien who had performed their binding ceremony now sat in judgment over their fate. Lord Kang of House Salren has petitioned this tribunal to annul the marriage bond between Lady Yura of Salren and the human designated T-Ho. the magistrate announced. He claims that the human manipulated sacred law and that the bond is therefore invalid. Kang rose to speak. His voice was smooth and practiced. Honored magistrate, this human has made a mockery of our ancient traditions. He used a forgotten clause of the accord to interfere with Draken justice. He had no right. He had no standing. He is a mechanic, nothing more. His kind are barely civilized. Murmurs ran through the crowd, some agreeing, some angry. The bond should be annulled, Kang continued. My sister should be returned to proper Draken custody, and this human should face punishment for his arrogance. The magistrate turned to Tiho. What do you say in response? Tiho stood. His legs felt weak, but he forced them to be steady. He looked at the chamber full of watching eyes, and he spoke. I am just a mechanic. Lord Kang is right about that. I fix ships. I repair machines. I am not important. He paused. But I can read. And I read every word of the accord of claimed debts. I did not manipulate anything. I followed the law exactly as it was written. The law was never meant to be used that way, Kang snapped. It was not written for humans. Then maybe the law should be more careful about what it says. Tiho's voice was calm. Section 14 does not say only noble species can invoke it. It says a bound spouse can speak as one voice with their partner. I am her partner. I spoke. That is all. The magistrate considered this. Lord Kang, the human raises a valid point. The accord does not specify species restrictions in Section 14. Kang's eyes flashed with anger. This is exactly the problem. This human twists words and exploits technicalities. He has corrupted my sister and brought shame upon my house. Actually, Yura said, rising to her feet, I would like to speak about shame. The chamber fell silent. Everyone stared at the silver-scaled Draken in her simple clothes. Her wings spread slightly behind her, catching the light. My brother speaks of shame, she said, but he knows nothing of it. He has never felt the weight of losing everything. He has never felt the cold of being abandoned by everyone he loved. She looked directly at Kang. I felt that shame. For months I carried it. I believed I deserved it. I believed I was worthless. Her voice grew stronger. But then this human showed me something different. He showed me that shame is not truth. Shame is just a weapon that powerful people use against those they want to control. And I am done being controlled. She pressed a button on the small device in her hand. Screens around the chamber flickered to life. Documents appeared. Communications. Evidence. Here is the truth, Yura said. Here is proof that Lord Kang of House Salren has been selling weapons to slavers. Here are the names of his contacts. Here are the amounts he was paid. Here is everything. The chamber erupted. Draken nobles shouted in outrage. Union officials scrambled to examine the data. Guards moved toward Lord Kang, who had gone very still. Lies, Kang said, but his voice was weak. This is fabrication. She invented this to destroy me. The data is encrypted with your personal codes, Yura replied. Codes that only the head of House Salren knows. If I fabricated this, how did I get your codes? Kang had no answer. His face twisted with fury and fear. The magistrate called for order. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet down. This evidence will need to be verified, the magistrate said. But if it is authentic, it changes everything. Lord Kang, you are hereby detained for investigation. Union guards will escort you to holding. Guards surrounded Kang. He did not resist, but as they led him past Tiho and Yura, he stopped. You think you have won, he hissed at Yura. But our house will not forget. Our people will not forget. You have betrayed your own blood. No, Yura said quietly. You betrayed our blood. You sold weapons that killed innocent people. You destroyed families. You caused suffering beyond measure. I did what our mother would have done. I stopped you. Kang was led away. The doors closed behind him, and suddenly the chamber felt different, lighter. The magistrate turned to Yura. Lady Yura, if this evidence is confirmed, your original conviction will be overturned. Your name will be restored. You will be free. Yura nodded. She had expected this, hoped for it. There is one more matter, the magistrate continued. With your conviction overturned, the marriage bond becomes voluntary rather than mandatory. You may choose to dissolve it and return to your previous status. The chamber went quiet again. Everyone watched, everyone waited. Yura turned to look at Tiho. He stood beside her, his mechanic's clothes out of place among all the robes and uniforms. His hands were rough from work. His face was tired but kind. He had saved her, not with weapons, not with wealth, with stubbornness and kindness and a willingness to read boring legal documents. She thought about her old life, the power, the status, the respect. She could have it all back. All she had to do was walk away. But when she tried to imagine walking away from this man, this impossible, wonderful human, something inside her refused. She turned back to the magistrate and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. I was bound to this man by law. That was my punishment. She paused. But I choose to stay with him by choice. That is my freedom. A murmur ran through the crowd. Surprise, confusion, wonder. Tiho stared at her. Yura, you do not have to do this. You can have your old life back, your status, everything. She smiled at him. It was the warmest smile she had ever given anyone. My old life was cold and empty, she said. This life here with you is warm and full. I have made my choice. The only question is whether you will have me. Tiho laughed. It was a sound of pure joy. Of course I will have you. I thought that was obvious. He took her hands in his, right there in front of the entire tribunal chamber, in front of Draken nobles and union officials and workers from 100 different species. A human mechanic holding the hands of a Draken lady, bound by law, united by love. The crowd began to applaud, slowly at first, then louder. Humans cheered. Other species joined in. Even some of the Drakens clapped their claws together. It was not just applause for a love story. It was applause for something bigger, for the idea that anyone, even the lowest and smallest, could stand up and be counted, could do what was right, could choose kindness over cruelty. 6 months later, Tiho's workshop had grown. New machines, new clients, new projects, but the best addition was the silver-scaled engineer who worked beside him every day. Yura had found her purpose again. She designed repair systems and improved station equipment. Her knowledge combined with Tiho's practical skills made them the best team on HFY 7. One afternoon, a young Draken traveler came into the workshop. He was barely past his 100th year, curious and wide-eyed. He stared at Yura like he could not believe what he was seeing. "You are Lady Yura of Salren," he said. "The one who exposed Lord Kang. Why are you here? Why are you with a human?" Yura looked up from the engine she was rebuilding. Her scales gleamed in the workshop lights. She was covered in grease and oil, and she had never looked happier. "Because he taught me something my people forgot," she said. "What?" She smiled. "That honor is not about what others think of you. It is about what you do when no one is watching." The young Draken thought about this. Then he bowed respectfully and left. Tiho walked over with 2 cups of tea. He handed one to Yura. "What was that about?" he asked. "Nothing important, just sharing some wisdom." They sat together in the warm workshop, surrounded by machines and tools and the smell of engine oil. Outside the viewport, the dying star cast orange light across the station. "Do you ever miss it?" Tiho asked. "Your old life, your titles?" Yura considered the question. She looked at her grease-stained hands, at her simple work clothes, at the small, cluttered workshop that had become her home. "No," she said finally, "I have everything I need right here." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a metal ring, simple and unadorned. She had made it herself from scrap metal in the workshop. I have been thinking, she said. Among dragons we give scales to show commitment. Among humans you give rings. I thought perhaps we could do both. She held out the ring. Tiho stared at it, then at her. Are you asking what I think you are asking? You already have my scale. Now I am asking if you will wear my ring. Not because of law, not because of contracts, because I choose you, every day, forever. Tiho took the ring. It fit perfectly on his finger. Yes, he said simply. The answer is yes. They kissed for the first time. It was awkward and strange, a human and a draken trying to figure out how their very different faces fit together. It was not graceful. It was not elegant. But it was perfect. Outside the workshop window, the universe continued its endless dance. Stars lived and died. Empires rose and fell. Species evolved and vanished. But in a small repair shop on a forgotten station, two souls had found each other, different in every way, united in every way that mattered. That was the power of humanity, not strength, not technology, not conquest. Just simple, stubborn, unbreakable kindness. And in the end, that was enough.